So tonight, I want to share a mystery from one of our greatest minds in magic, Juan Tamariz. In his book, The Magic Rainbow, Tamariz describes what he calls the 7 veils of mystery in magic. Now, why did I choose this topic? It's not a topic I would have chosen a couple of years ago, but it has special meaning for me as of late. In short, these are layers that he puts around a magic trick. And these layers make an audience feel something deeper is going on, an authenticity, a connection with the magician. So today, let's pull back just one veil, the 6th one that caught my attention, the mystery of the rich inner world. Now, Tamariz insists that audiences know when a magician has depth, when a magician has diverse interests, when a magician has passions. They are not always obvious connections to magic, but he wrote, "I know they know, but I don't know how they know. It's a true magical mystery." Now that just stopped me in my tracks, and I said, I have to learn more about this. So let me take you on a quick journey as to how I have explored this in the past year. So this got me thinking, and you might want to try this too. Look into your past, as far back as you can remember, and list your passions, list your interests. Now pay close attention to how I describe this very odd collection of interests and passions. Now, much to my amazement, they all had a common thread. I had never connected these dots before. I had never realized there was a common thread, and I'm glad I did. So the first was going to Louis Tannen's magic shop in New York, where as a kid, I first found the boundary between reality and wonder, the possible and the impossible. When those elevator doors opened at Tannen's and you walked into the showroom, I still remember that feeling. It was a wonderful, magical world, and I wear that proudly tonight, the Louis Tannen's shirt of that era. Now, in New York, the 1969 Mets, with 1 month left in the season, they were down and out. They were a whopping 9.5 games out of first place until one night, a black cat walked out onto the field and walked into the Chicago Cubs dugout. They were the leading team in the National League East, and miracles started to happen. The Cubs, after that black cat incident, the Cubs lost 12 of their final 20 games, and the Mets ended up being the world champions. It was the second time I felt the impossible become possible. December 12th, 1975, front row for my first ever Bruce Springsteen concert. An impossible 3-hour shared experience, shared wonder that I long to rekindle every time Springsteen goes on tour. And I've been to 56 shows, and I still have that feeling in me. In the 1980s, okay, please don't judge. I loved watching professional wrestling. I was a teenager. I was watching in New York on a UHF TV station. I think it was a Spanish TV station, but I was religious about it. And back then, behind the scenes, they referred to a concept called kayfabe. And that is the commitment of the wrestlers to blur the real and the fake, the possible and the impossible. You're starting to see a trend here. WrestleMania 3 rocked my world when Hulk Hogan lifted up a 525-pound Andre the Giant and body slammed him to the mat for the impossible. And of all possible art styles and artists, I was passionate about one, Rene Magritte, the surrealist painter, and his ability to walk that fine line between reality and dreams, possible and impossible. And when I moved here from New York in the 90s, it was to help create the world's first TV streaming service. It was called Stargazer. It was the precursor of Fios TV by Verizon. At that time, Netflix was mailing DVD movies to customers, and Blockbuster made you come in and borrow those video cassettes. So when we created Stargazer, it was like real magic. It was the first on-demand TV streaming service. Okay, and then piano jazz, which I love also, the fine line between structure and freedom, between technique and creativity, because a transcendent solo or a unique interplay between musicians is so special, it's very magical to me. And lastly, my kids, Cole and Carson, when they were 3 to 6 years old, whenever anybody asked me what it's like to raise kids, I would always say the same thing. When they're 3 to 6, it's a magical time. It is just a magical time in their development because you get to see the world through their eyes, a world of imagination, a space between reality and fantasy, the possible and the impossible. You can see this common thread. So now it gets even more amazing. So I learned when studying my mentors, my magic mentors, that David Copperfield and Jeff McBride and Jamie Ian Swiss also say their biggest influence was going up those elevator doors at Louis Tannen's. They say, imagine the effect Tannen's could have on a young kid in those days, stepping into another world of infinite possibility. They all had the same feeling.
You took the elevator up and the door opened and it was a wonderland, a shock of chaos, of color and showcases and books and photos. It was just a magical place. Almost invariably when David and I are together, we just end up talking about Tannen's because we both grew up in that shop.
Wow, you recreated that magic shop from your childhood, from your youth, and put it in that museum.
Yeah, and people get very emotional when they come in here. They see this. It's a part of the world that was very, very important. You know, the camaraderie and the association with artists and the mentorship that existed in the brick and mortar magic shop. Yeah.
Springsteen? Come on, what does Springsteen have to do with magic, right? So I was amazed to hear him explain what he calls his nightly magic trick. If you read his autobiography, he leads off the autobiography by talking about his magic trick, a magic trick he creates every time he walks on stage. Roll the clip, if you can.
I have a magic I don't understand. What is the magic trick to you?
Well, it's you're there to manifest something. You're there to, before you go in there, it's an empty space. It's an empty building. So the audience is going to come and you're going to show up and together you're going to manifest something that's very, very real, that's very tangible, but you're going to pull it out of thin air. It wasn't there before you showed up. It didn't exist.
Pro wrestling. Now, Max Maven, probably the greatest mentalist of our time, he said the biggest influence on his performance of magic is professional wrestling. He had a huge passion for professional wrestling up until the day he died. And when Max Maven created his life's work, a 4 DVD set called of all things, Kayfabe.
Welcome to Kayfabe. Now, before we begin, I feel I ought to explain that term to you, because for most of you, it's a new word. It comes from the community of American professional wrestling. It means the secret, because the world of professional wrestling has many secrets. In the old days, even the wrestlers' families were not let in. And wrestlers used the word kayfabe to signal one another when there was something that shouldn't be discussed in front of outsiders.
And then you know what I realized recently? Magicians could learn a hell of a lot from professional wrestling, and I'm not even joking. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's wrestling got to do with magic? But stick with me, because I honestly believe that if you're a magician and you're not studying the psychology, the structure, and the performance of pro wrestling, you're missing out on one of the most powerful blueprints for becoming a better performer. The reason WWE became so popular and continues to be so popular, or one of the reasons, is because they understand characterization. If you're just watching a random wrestler that you don't know and you know nothing about that person, and they just walk to the ring in black trunks and black boots, you don't care whether they win, lose, or draw. You're not.
Okay. So I was amazed by that, just like I was amazed by Bruce Springsteen talking about his magic trick. And then I started studying Joshua Jay, and one of his major inspirations for his magic is not just art, not just surrealistic art, but René Magritte. And that's who I was studying on a few slides back. I was amazed by that. And Josh says Magritte would have made a sensational magician. I have never experienced such a rush of inspiration as when I first encountered Magritte's paintings. His canvases are like magic tricks, mysteries just waiting to be realized. And then piano jazz, when I started studying Michael Close and Ossie Wind, I found out that the #1 influence on their performance of magic is piano jazz. I just never realized that before. Michael Close says he calls it deliberate spontaneity. In piano and magic is apparent improvisation, actually supported by deep structure and preparation. And Ossie Wind, he talks about magicians having to adapt in real time, listen and reacting to your audience, creating spontaneous reactions in the moment, and the audience is unaware of any deviations from the planned routine. Can we play that clip?
The reason behind music, the reason you play music for people is to invoke and evoke an emotion. And the technique that it requires to do that should really not be the focus of attention to the audience. If they're more focused on your technique as a player, they're probably less involved with letting the emotional side of the music sink in. I discovered through my musical training that magic itself, the performance of magic, especially the performance of sleight of hand magic, has its own inherent rhythm. And if that rhythm is broken in some way, for example, there are some magicians who speed up when they have to do a move, or they slow down as they try to do the move. It's just like a musician speeding up or slowing down for no reason at all in a piece of music. It becomes obvious there's something wrong to the audience.
A lot of people don't know that we are very much like jazz musicians. I'm not a musician. I'm going to probably butcher this analogy here. But we write the story as it goes. In other words, you might see me do a trick and think that's what I do every day, but I don't. So in other words, if something goes wrong, because every person is really unpredictable. I said, take any card. Maybe I'm trying to make you take a certain card. Maybe I'm trying to influence you, and you're not going for it. I'm okay with making a little detour. You just don't know I'm taking a detour. And I'm improvising, and then we'll go somewhere else. And I'm okay with that. So a lot of the magic that I love to do, we call it jazzy magic, is magic that literally gets written as we go, but I'm the only one who knows it.
Thank you, Ossie. So a year ago, I took my son Cole on a Vanishing Ink trip, one of their getaways to Egypt, and spent a week with yet another magic mentor, John Gustafaro. And during the trip, I read his fine book called The Nth Degree. I was getting templed out, and I wanted to stay back one day, and I read his book, where he suggests a back-of-the-napkin approach that you should all try. And it's in Nth Degree. It's called Creating Purpose. And what he says is picture all of your interests, which is what we've been talking about. Focus on the common threads and create one common purpose. So that's what I did when I stayed back that day. In the circle, I created a mission statement, a purpose. This is what he suggests. And you can see the common thread. It's to unite passions and interests, for me, to help businesses, students, and my kids challenge the impossible and inspire what's possible. And I focused on magic in business, family, and mentorship. And without going into all the details, I can just say it's already started. So to help businesses using magic, I've created a character called the CEO Magician to help businesses with off-site meetings and sales off-site meetings using magic to illustrate success principles in business. I've also started to mentor students and present at colleges and universities in the area. This is Georgetown University last summer. And I also decided not to have a 9-to-5 job anymore and to work from home and to build the startups and to spend more time with my son and my daughter, Cole and Carson, trying to inspire them into what's possible in their lives too. So I've discovered a common thread, not only going backwards, but also looking forward. And I think you should all see how your passions and your interests can work together, like the veils of magic and mystery, to make your magic and your lives more purposeful and rewarding. Thank you very much. Thank you. And while you're clapping, let's hear it for Craig Pfeiffer, Eric Henning, Ken Jones and Alec Negri, Ken Trombley, Louis Hofheimer, Chuck Jones, Vic Brisbane. Thank you very much.